Hey there, I'm Alex Kidman, and this is the Oppo Find X8 Pro, Oppo's best phone in years. Let's get into the review. The Find X8 Pro is built around a 6.78-inch, 2780 by 1264 pixel AMOLED display capable of between 1 to 120 Hz refresh rates. And where a lot of its competitors have shied away from curved displays over the years, Oppo has kept one on the Oppo Find X8 Pro, though it's more of a gentle curve really, and it runs across all the edges of the phone rather than just the side edges. And look, I get some people really don't like the feel of a curved phone. I've never particularly minded them, and I do reckon the subtle style of the Find X8 Pro looks pretty good. Here in Australia, the Find X8 Pro only ships in two colour choices, either pearl white or space black. Oppo Australia has loaned me the space black, although it's really more of a grey. Black isn't that exciting, of course, but it's fine for what it is if you don't like the more showy pearl white colour. You will, it seems, have to shell out extra for a protective case for the Find X8 Pro. Regular viewers will know I'm kind of obsessional about cases as a good thing, especially for premium phones, given the cost. Because, at least for the box that I got, there was no protective case. Oppo Australia's site doesn't seem to list it. But the box that I've got also has a cardboard slip, which looks like it could house one. So maybe some international models have it. It's not exactly clear, but at least cases are available. The real design point for the Find X8 Pro sits around the back thanks to a massive camera circle that houses 4 separate camera lenses and a rather prominent Hasselblad logo, thanks to Oppo's tie-up with Hasselblad. It certainly stands out, makes it very obvious this is a camera-centric phone. In terms of controls, it's an interesting one. On the left-hand side, you'll find a switch which flicks between mute and vibration and ring modes for the phone itself, very kind of iPhone-esque, or old-school iPhone-esque, I suppose. It's not an action button, this is just a switch in this case. While the right-hand side houses volume buttons, a power button, and a nearly imperceptible camera shutter button that legitimately you could miss if you didn't know it was there. It's very much in the style of the iPhone 16's camera button, although it's a slightly different thing in use. I'll get into that when I talk about the camera capabilities of the phone. If you're after biometric unlocking, that's handled via an in-display fingerprint reader. I've really had no problems with that during my review period at all. On the resistance front, Oppo's claim for the Find X8 Pro is that it's both IP68 and IP69 rated for water resistance, which is impressive and also a little bit unusual, I think. Impressive because most phones honestly top out at IP68, but also unusual because IP69 ratings usually, or typically to my understanding, encompass the ratings below them, which is to say an IP69 phone typically should be an IP68 phone by definition. If all this talk of IP ratings has you going, what the heck is Alex talking about? Isn't it just a waterproof phone? I've got a full video on waterproof phones and why they're not really waterproof that you should check out. On the camera front, in pure hardware terms, the Find X8 Pro packs in 4 50-megapixel lenses at the back. A wide lens, ultra-wide lens, and dual telephoto lenses, or one telephoto and one ultra-telephoto, at 3x zoom and 6x zoom, respectively. And for the selfie-obsessed, there's a single front-facing 32-megapixel sensor to play, although it doesn't have optical image stabilization. So you do have to kind of play around with your selfies a bit, though I didn't have too many problems in that regard. I mean, I can't do that much with my face, let's face it. That's not the Find X8 Pro's fault, of course. And look, that's a lot of sensors packed into the one phone, and I did find the choice of lenses really liberating. It's really nice to have that choice creatively to pick what's going to work best for framing within a given scene. And honestly, mostly speaking, the Find X8 Pro delivered really pleasing camera results. Oppo, for a while there, did a lot of post-processing that accentuated colour, gave it that real colour pop that some people really do like, but that just never looked really natural to me, and it's toned that way back in the Find X8 Pro, delivering much more lifelike and good pictures. On the zoom front, Oppo doesn't just start and stop at 6x zoom, that would be well below par for a flagship, with a hybrid zoom mode that can push up to 120x zoom if you so desire. And look, every 100x zoom that I've tested in the past has been garbage. The results have just been awful across the board. So I wasn't expecting much here, although Oppo has an interesting take on how it does this, because up to a certain point it just does a hybrid zoom, but then it will kick in what it calls AI telescope zoom. So it's using AI to enhance the pictures you take after you take them, based on its best guesses as to the thing that you're trying to photograph and how it might clean that shot up. Interesting idea in theory, but does it work? Well, I'll give you an example here. While out on a walk, I got the idea to take some sample zoom shots of the valley across from where I was walking. I'm always a little cautious with these long zooms because you can feel really voyeuristic, as though you're intruding on people's privacy. So I just chose as my subject the back of a business, not a private space at all, not somewhere where I felt like I was going to be doing any corporate snooping or snooping in on anyone's washing line or anything of the sort. So the ultra-wide shot, of course, starting out, it's nothing spectacular. It doesn't look great. I'm not after a good-looking photo here, but it's fine, as is the one-time shot, which is just the regular wide lens, of course. There's a 2x mode built into the camera. That is, of course, just a digital crop. There's no 2x lens. And up to 3x is equally fine, as is 6x. It's all good. It all works. Honestly, up to about 30x, perfectly fine. And that's about typically where I start to see errors creep in, where I start to see camera quality really dip on these phones. So what if we push this shot to 120x? How sharp can it get with a little AI enhancement? The answer is, yeah, not very. That's kind of awful. What are, I'm pretty sure, some downlights there have just become an AI jumbled mess. The top of that building is all kinds of weird. No, this is really rather bad. AI telescope zoom is also especially bad if you use it to photograph any text or logo from a distance, because it just guesstimates what it's trying to do here. So just as an example, I took this photo of a school zone sign, which should be saying that it's going from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. But yeah, the Find X8 Pro didn't quite see it that way. This is far, far from ideal. And honestly, the reality here is that while the AI is trying its best is not good enough. I would suggest you stick to 30x and under, and you'll get decent sort of results in decent light. This is the other limitation that the Find X8 Pro has, because while its general low-light photography is actually quite good, up there with other premium phones, honestly, zoom is the exception. That zoom lens, the 6x zoom lens, just isn't fast enough for really good, pleasing shots, and the more you push it, the worse it gets. Stick to lower level zooms in decent light, or just use the regular wide lens most of the time for your low light shots, and you can get some really pleasing photos and a really pleasing camera experience overall. I really do like phones that just allow me to experiment creatively. The Oppo Find X8 Pro's other camera trick is the inclusion of a dedicated camera shutter button, built into its right-hand side, very much in the style of the iPhone 16, let's be honest here. Though Oppo's ambition here is smaller than Apple's, because the camera button here doesn't do any kind of modification of settings. It's pretty much just a shutter button and or a way to launch the camera app itself. As a way to launch the camera app, yeah, it's fine. I've used it a little bit. As a shutter button, I actually really don't like it all that much. It's all too easy to introduce a bit of shutter into your photos by using it, because it sits flat against the phone. There's definitely some muscle memory learning stuff there, and honestly, I got my best shots not using it. Like with the iPhone, this just feels like a solution to a problem that virtually nobody had. Thankfully, of course, you're not stuck using it. You can just use regular camera shutter options, and that's pretty much what I did. On the hardware side, most Android flagship phones tend to opt for one of Qualcomm's higher-end Snapdragon processors, but that's very much not what Oppo has opted for with the Find X8 Pro. Instead, it runs on a MediaTek Dimensity 9400 processor, propped up with 16GB of RAM and 512GB of storage. There's sadly no capacity for microSD expansion, but that's very much in line with what Oppo's premium competitors do in this space as well. The question around the Dimensity 9400 is how well it's going to compare against those premium Qualcomm packing handsets, or, for that matter, the best silicon blobs that Apple can forge into its iPhones. And the answer is very well indeed, especially considering Oppo's slightly lower premium price point of $1,799 Australian. Now, that's still a fair chunk of money. It's not as low cost as Oppo flagships has been in the past, but it's down there when you consider that a lot of its flagship competitors these days are tilting much closer to $2,000. To give that some context, here's how the Oppo Find X8 Pro compares using Geekbench 6's CPU test. Second only to the iPhone 16 Pro Max is not a bad place to be in, and while Apple is obviously still leading the pack there, Oppo has bought the best competition I've seen to date to bear against it. Now, at the time of recording this, the Samsung Galaxy S25 series has been announced. I've not yet been able to test it out to see how it compares. But right now with this phone in my hand, this is the fastest Android phone I've tested to date for CPU performance. And the good news does not stop there. Because on the GPU front, if we look at 3D Mark's Wildlife Extreme test, it actually beats the entire pack. This is a really, really good phone. This is a phone that performs well across every single app I've thrown at it without exception. Plenty of power, and it knows how to use it, and that's great. Now, there is an argument to be had here, and I think it's a fair enough one, that actually flagship phones are the sports cars of the phone world, that they're actually overpowered for most people's needs. That is true of the Find X8 Pro. I can't deny that. Most people can get by on what a mid-range phone these days packs, but if you're after a flagship with plenty of power, this has it. In terms of OS upgrades, Oppo doesn't have the greatest track record here, but it is trying. The Find X8 Pro is promised to get 5 OS upgrades and 6 years of security updates, which is slightly less than you see out of the likes of Samsung and Google, who do 7 years of both respectively, but it's at least encouraging to see that those numbers are ticking up from other competitors. Now, it's feasible that part of that lesser upgrade path is down to Oppo's use of its own ColorOS platform, which provides some interesting and different UI pathways to standard Android tasks. ColorOS started out way back when as a pretty blatant iOS clone, let's be honest here, but it has evolved into its own platforms that I'm aware some users really do rather like, and I'm on the record as not being one of them. And I can totally appreciate that long-term Oppo users may well find the vanilla Android that I prefer to be the different look and feel for Android at this point in time. Totally a matter of taste. What's likely to be irksome across the board, though, is Oppo's insistence on stuffing the Find X8 Pro with a lot of additional and duplicate apps by default. Of course, the Booking.com app is there because it's seemingly you can't have an Android phone that doesn't have Booking.com pre-installed, and I wish it wasn't there. Obviously, money is changing hands. I don't like this kind of thing from any manufacturer, so I'm not going to like it here. You also get Oppo's app market, and while I appreciate the idea of app market diversity, and the app market interface is really very, very simple to use, I can't find too many reasons to use it over Google Play, especially as many of its apps are kind of poor or they're blatant clones of existing popular apps. So to give you an example, if you search for Balatro, the popular roguelike poker game on Google Play, you'll find Balatro. No surprise there. Search for it on the app market and you'll find some really poorly made clones with that game title in them. And look, that doesn't endear the app market experience to me or suggest that it's massively trustworthy. Your experience may, of course, vary, and obviously the app market is also built for the Chinese market where you get no Google Play, because that's Oppo's home market. To be crystal clear here, you do still get Google Play access for the Australian model, so I've essentially just used that beyond exploring App Marketplace, and I'd say that's what most users should do to get the best quality apps and to make sure they're as secure as they possibly can be. On the battery front, the Oppo Find X8 Pro packs in a surprisingly large battery, and for once, this isn't just marketing fluff of a company claiming that a 5,000 mAh battery is a large battery, because that's basically the Android standard. Instead, it's got a 5,910 mAh battery, quite a bit larger than most typical Android phones and many of its flagship competitors. But as they say, it's not about the size, it's about what you do with it, and smartphone use can, of course, always be highly variable. So I turned to my standard YouTube battery test to see how the Find X8 Pro stacks up to its flagship rivals. And early results were certainly acceptable, well over the 90% limit, where I see some phones struggle to last a day on moderate usage, but not top of the pack for a single hour's worth of testing. However, it gets a lot more interesting when I expand it out to my 3-hour YouTube battery test. And look, I've only recently started doing this test, so I do not have anywhere near as many comparable figures for those phones to pitch it against. But if I put it against the 16 Pro Max, a phone which bested it by 1% in the 1-hour test, over 3 hours, the Find X8 Pro does a lot better. And this bears out in day-to-day usage as well. A day's usage, dead easy. I could totally see some people getting nearly 2 days out of this with very light usage, although if you're only using this lightly, you're perhaps underutilizing it a bit. But the end picture here is really good battery life. Oppo is one of the very few premium phone makers, too, to still include a charger in the box with most of its phones. Now, there's a reason for this, however, because Oppo has its own proprietary fast charging standard, SuperVOOC. And sure, SuperVOOC sounds like some kind of vacuuming attachment, but it is in fact a specifically pepped up charger setup that can power the Find X8 Pro at up to 80 watts for very fast charging indeed. It also supports fast wireless charging at up to 50 watts via Oppo's own AirVOOC charging pad, and I've been able to test that particular device. Outside VOOC situations, it's a much more sedate wireless charging experience. No Qi 2 on board, which feels like a missed opportunity to me. You can, of course, still use other chargers with the Find X8 Pro. It will take a charge from other high-capacity or low-capacity chargers, although the reverse is not always true. I have found that some phones do not like SuperVOOC chargers for getting their power from, if that matters to you. So should you buy the Find X8 Pro? Well, look, honestly, whilst it's been a while, the past few Find X phones that I've been able to review didn't entirely thrill me. They were fine, they were capable enough, but really they had very little that stood out against their competition. And that's a problem for a flagship phone. Often they were a lot more promise than reality. The Oppo Find X8 Pro changes that because while there are some issues, that camera button is a little superfluous, the app marketplace kind of annoys me, these are honestly minor issues against the overall value package that Oppo is presenting here. The Find X8 Pro is fast, the battery life is excellent, and the cameras deliver really pleasing results, as long as you steer clear of AI-enhanced zooms. Not everyone needs a premium flagship phone or has the money for it, but if you're in the market for a more luxurious device, the Oppo Find X8 Pro absolutely should be considered as a top-tier contender. And that's my take on the Oppo Find X8 Pro. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and consider becoming a Patreon or Ko-Fi supporter. Thank you.